Hey guys, Hidden Truths here. Welcome to this new video with a bunch of new stories. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers and I think we can do it with your help. So please subscribe. It would honestly mean a lot to me. Now, let's get right into the stories.
A Tuesday evening in early spring, fluorescent lights buzzing over the hum of half-broken machines. The laundromat 2 blocks from my apartment isn't romantic in any traditional sense. Cracked linoleum, detergent scent sharp as vinegar, a small TV muted in the corner, but it's where I noticed her. Mara Quinn, as I'd learn, stood over dryer 7 with a basket of damp clothes and an expression halfway between annoyance and resignation. The machine had eaten her quarters and shut down mid-cycle. "Number 7's temperamental," I said, sliding coins into number 5. "I usually bribe it with an extra quarter, but it doesn't always listen." She laughed softly. "So you're telling me I'm negotiating with a dryer?" "Pretty much," I said. "But if you want to hedge your bets, I've got change." She hesitated, then pushed her basket closer. I fed coins into number 5 and hit the start button. Warm air began to churn. "Thanks," she said. "Mara. Just moved in on 9th Street. "Elliot. Down the block." I shook her hand, then wiped mine on my jeans, leaving a detergent mark. That was it. No lightning bolt, no swelling music. Just a woman new to the building, her clothes saved from mildew, and me standing there with quarters rattling in my pocket. We kept bumping into each other. At the corner store, where she debated 3 brands of peanut butter with the seriousness of a philosopher. On my walk home from the culinary school, where she'd be hauling poster board and paintbrushes from the supply shop. Sunday mornings, I caught her at the farmer's market, picking through peaches with the focus of a jeweler examining stones. One morning, she held up a basket of strawberries. "Too ripe?" "Perfect if you eat them today," I said. "Or put them in a tart." "Do you make tarts often?" she asked. "Line cook by trade. I teach evening classes now. Students think sugar's easy until they ruin a custard. After that, Sundays became habit. She'd pick fruit or vegetables, I'd buy cheese or bread, and we'd trade like it was a fair. Sometimes I'd send her home with leftovers from class, roast chicken, risotto, half a pan of brownies, and she'd leave them cooling on her stoop for us to share later. One evening, rinsing brushes after a lesson, she left streaks of cobalt paint across my wrist. I kept them there longer than I should have, liking the reminder. Not poetic, just precise, I thought. Weeks blurred. A rhythm built itself without effort. We leaned on each other's routines, not out of need but out of comfort. I fixed the sticky drawer in her dresser. She taped one of my syllabi to her fridge with paint-flecked magnets. Her apartment smelled faintly of turpentine and citrus candles, mine carried garlic and coffee. I tried not to read too much into it. One Saturday, while kneeling to tighten a loose screw on the drawer track, I noticed a small shoebox on the bottom shelf. Brown cardboard, neatly labeled in black marker, "Firsts." Curiosity flickered, but I didn't open it. When I shifted the drawer, the lid slipped just enough to reveal a single folded slip of paper. I recognized the logo immediately, the laundromat receipt from our first night. I didn't mention it. I just slid the drawer back into place and said, "You're good now, smooth pull, no sticking." She smiled, wiped her hands on her jeans, and offered me a glass of water. Walking home, I replayed that glimpse of the shoebox. One receipt. One label. A private archive of beginnings. I tried to file it away, but the thought stayed with me, she's keeping track. That night, I cooked pasta in my tiny kitchen and poured a single glass of wine. Vinyl spun in the corner, Miles Davis low and steady. I found myself writing, "First load," on a spare piece of paper, sliding it into my own recipe box. I'm not sentimental. At least, I didn't think I was. But sometimes precision looks a lot like tenderness. The shoebox confirmed what I hadn't said aloud, this wasn't just passing convenience. Our Sundays weren't filler, the leftovers weren't charity. We were starting something, quietly, between market stalls and shared quarters at the laundromat. And for the first time in a long while, I wanted to keep track too. Those weeks settled like warm bread, familiar, steady, nourishing in ways I hadn't realized I'd missed. It wasn't fireworks. It was mugs. Matching ones, to be exact. One Saturday she handed me a ceramic cup with a crooked handle, glazed in pale green. "For your place," she said. The next morning, I saw its twin on her counter, same pale green, handle slightly straighter. No ceremony, just mugs. But when I poured coffee at my sink and knew she was doing the same at hers, it felt like something planted had taken root. Soon there was a key too. She clipped it to a lanyard with a clay bead one of her students had made. "In case you get tired of waiting outside with leftovers," she said. I slid it into my pocket like it was nothing, but walking home I tapped it against my thigh, the weight more symbolic than any vow. We left notes on each other's fridges, shopping reminders, little drawings, times for pickup. Hers were colorful, a swirl of markers. Mine were plain, block letters on lined paper. Both got the job done. It wasn't perfect. I noticed things, small dissonances that didn't quite fit. One afternoon, a manila envelope sat on her counter, stamped undeliverable in bold black ink. No return address. She brushed it into a drawer when I walked in, saying only, "Wrong paperwork." Another time, her phone lit up with a muted reminder, "Boarding pass ready." She silenced it quickly, tucking the phone under a sketch pad. I didn't ask. People travel, I told myself. Schedules overlap. A postcard arrived in her mail with a skyline I didn't recognize, tall buildings I couldn't place, a pier stretching out into pale water. The message on the back read simply, "Counting down." She tucked it onto her bulletin board between student doodles. I read the words once and tried to forget them. I reminded myself, I'm not in the business of guessing. I notice, that's all. Our days together stayed easy. She'd grade papers on my couch while I prepped for class, red pen clicking in a rhythm against the pages. I'd chop onions and narrate each cut, she'd tease me for sounding like a cooking show. One Sunday, she pressed a peach sticker into my palm at the market. "For your ledger," she said, laughing. She didn't know I had one. I tucked it into my wallet anyway. Nights ended with her head against my shoulder, paint under her nails, my apron tossed on a chair. I didn't need grand gestures. I liked the ordinary. I liked precision disguised as affection. Still, the fragments collected in quiet ways. The envelope. The reminder. The postcard. I didn't push. She'd tell me when it mattered, I thought. The reveal came not with fanfare but with paper. A letter slipped under her door late one afternoon, bold letterhead across the top, National Teaching Placement Program. I recognized the typeface from a colleague who'd once applied. My stomach tightened. I bent to pick it up, hesitated, then set it on her table unopened. When she came in, she froze at the sight of it, then tore it open with careful fingers. Her eyes scanned the page. She pressed her lips together. "Congratulations," the letter began. "Your appointment has been confirmed. Report date, 6 weeks." She set it down, exhaled, and looked at me. Not guilty, resolved. I said nothing. She said nothing. The clock on her microwave ticked louder than it should have. That night, walking back to my apartment, I thought about her shoebox labeled firsts. The laundromat receipt had been the only slip then. Did she plan to add the appointment letter next? Did beginnings and endings belong in the same box? I poured a glass of water, stood at my counter, and lined up the facts. We'd built mugs and notes and shared leftovers. We'd also built a pile of unopened signals I'd chosen not to ask about. Truth belongs at the start, I reminded myself, not after mugs and keys and peach stickers. But we were past the start now. When I opened my fridge the next morning, her note was still there, marker fading slightly on the paper, "Don't forget milk. M." I smiled, then folded it into my pocket. Something was shifting, but it didn't erase the days we'd had. The question was what version of us would exist in 6 weeks. And whether either of us had the courage to speak it plain. The truth arrived before I could frame the question. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I walked past the elementary school on my way back from the market. Through the open windows I heard laughter, children's voices tumbling over each other, and one little chorus rang out, "We'll miss you, Miss Quinn." I froze. Later, outside the building, a boy tugged at his mother's sleeve and said, "I gave her my drawing for the goodbye card." His mother nodded, distracted. I kept walking, the peach bag cutting into my palm. By the time I reached Mara's door, I'd lined up the evidence in my head, the shoebox receipt, the undeliverable envelope, the boarding pass reminder, the postcard, the placement letter, now the goodbye card from her students. I wasn't angry. Just aware that the truth had been trailing me like a shadow I'd refused to name. That evening, we sat at her small kitchen table, the one covered in paint smudges she never bothered to scrub away. The appointment letter lay between us like a third guest. "I should have told you sooner," she said. I didn't argue. "How long have you known?" "Since January," she admitted. "The program matched me with a school that really needs staff. I didn't want to jinx it until it was certain." I tapped the table gently. "So the envelope, the postcard, the reminder, all pieces of this?" She nodded, not defensive. "Yes. I was waiting until I had an actual report date. I didn't expect to meet you. I didn't expect us to fit like this." Her voice cracked slightly on that last word. I leaned back. "It's not betrayal. It's a truth delayed. But it matters." She pressed her palms together. "I know. We talked like adults do when the choice is less about desire and more about logistics." "What do you want?" I asked. "To go," she said quietly. "I promised myself I would. These kids need stability, and the program builds long-term support. It's the kind of work I trained for." "And us?" I asked. She shook her head. "I didn't see us coming. I thought, maybe this would be a season, a kind distraction. But you kept showing up with bread and coffee and quarters in your pocket. Suddenly it mattered." Her honesty landed heavier than any excuse. I exhaled. "I don't want to stand in your way. I also don't want to pretend distance is simple. I know what long distance does, it turns time into obligation." We let the words settle. The refrigerator clicked, a dog barked outside, her clock ticked like it had the night the letter came. "What if we try?" she asked softly. "A month. Real effort. No illusions." "A trial," I said. "With boundaries." She nodded. "What kind?" "No heroic speeches," I said. "If it isn't working, we say it plain. We don't stretch the truth like gum until it snaps." She smiled faintly. "And no pretending. If we're lonely, we admit it. If we're tired, we admit that too." I nodded. "We also decide now what happens if it ends. We don't rewrite the beginning. We don't let bitterness bleed backward." Her eyes softened. "We keep the firsts." "The laundromat receipt," I said. "The peach sticker," she added. We both laughed, tired but honest. When I left her apartment that night, I didn't feel devastated. Just grounded. On the walk home, I thought about the shoebox and how it held only beginnings. I wondered if endings deserved their own box, or if they belonged side by side, unseparated. At my door, I pressed the key she'd given me into my palm. The clay bead clinked softly against the metal. I didn't put it on the counter, I hung it back on the hook. In bed, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, truth at the beginning, Elliot. That's the only rule. The next morning, Mara texted me a photo. Her students had drawn a giant sun on poster board, each ray filled with a goodbye message. One child had written in shaky letters, "Don't forget us when you go help new kids." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "They'll be lucky to have you. I'm glad I got a first row seat." She replied, "We still have time." And for the first time in weeks, I believed her. We gave it a month. Not a dramatic vow, just a penciled square on the calendar labeled trial. The rules were simple. We scheduled real dates, Wednesday dinners where she came to my class and tasted whatever my students plated, Saturday walks at the market where she still inspected peaches like gemstones. Sundays we set aside for phone calls. No video, cameras off, so we listened more than we looked. We agreed on no heroic speeches. If either of us felt the rope fray, we'd say it. In practice, it was both easier and harder than I imagined. Easier, because nothing about Mara had changed. She still laughed with her whole face, still left notes in marker on my fridge, still carried paint under her nails. Harder, because the clock sat in every room we shared. 6 weeks shrank to 5, then 4. Every plan we made had an invisible border. Packing started slowly. She donated stacks of classroom supplies she couldn't take, bundles of old lesson plans, art samples with fingerprints of children I never met. One evening, I found her sitting cross-legged on the floor with the shoebox labeled firsts open beside her. Inside, the laundromat receipt sat folded, now joined by a stub from the farmer's market and the wrapper from a chocolate bar I'd once broken in half for us. She looked up when I entered. "Help me." Together we sorted. Some things she kept, the receipt, the market stub, the peach sticker I admitted I'd been carrying in my wallet. Others we tossed, duplicate ticket stubs, a napkin with smudged ink, scraps too small to mean anything outside their moment. She sighed when the box was half full. Funny, how much I thought I had to keep. Beginnings multiply, I said. But not all of them are meant to stay. We sealed the box with new tape. She wrote "keep" in fresh marker, steady hand. I taught my classes, made sure the knives were sharp and the onions diced to uniform size. Students joked that I was meticulous to the point of obsession. They weren't wrong. Precision is how I quiet the noise. Between lessons, I texted Mara simple updates, a photo of bread cooling, a quote from a student who confused rosemary with thyme. She sent me snapshots of her half-packed apartment, a pile of brushes, a half-empty drawer. One night she wrote, "I hate the in-between. Too much goodbye, not enough hello." I typed back, "Beginnings deserve the truth, even if it changes the ending." She didn't reply right away, but the next morning I found a note slipped under my door, "Yes." When the trial month ended, we didn't stage a conclusion. No speeches. We met for coffee, sat outside under a noisy street, and laid it plain. "This works while it works," she said. "But I won't ask you to stretch further than you want. I won't sabotage your next chapter," I told her. "And I won't rewrite our first one into something it wasn't." We held hands across the table, not to promise forever, but to acknowledge we'd already promised something else, honesty from here on. The day she left, I carried one of her boxes down to the car. She hugged me in the parking lot, firm, brief, like punctuation at the end of a sentence that mattered. "First's box in the front seat," she said. "Good," I answered. "It should ride with you." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and slid behind the wheel. I watched the taillights until they disappeared. Back upstairs, I brewed coffee in the pale green mug she'd given me. Its twin was on her counter miles away by then, waiting for its next use. I sat at my small table, opened my recipe box, and added a slip of paper. On it I wrote, "Last night in town, good coffee, no speeches." Then I closed the lid. Not because it was the end, but because the beginning had already been written. Life now is quieter. I teach, I cook, I sort laundry in the same cracked laundromat where we met. Sometimes I glance at dryer 7 and almost expect it to hiccup just so I can step in again with quarters. When I walk past her old building, I don't feel loss so much as gratitude. She taught me that beginnings are precise things. They deserve truth, not delay. We didn't promise forever. We promised to stop pretending, so what we keep actually holds.